Welcome for those who do not know me. I'm Prajwal Shetty, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us for another session with the Blackstone LaunchPad Masterclass. At Blackstone LaunchPad, we are here to make entrepreneurship accessible to all students, and these workshops are just one way we do it. So on today's episode of Masterclass, we are learning Public Relations 101. Tonight, you'll get an intro to how to attain earned media and industry exposure with a limited budget. Leading this class is Cheyenne Ketter Franklin. She's a native Buffalonian and a UB alum, having received her BS and MBA from UB, and currently is the Senior Public Relations Coordinator at Goldberg Segura, a national civil litigations firm with more than 20 offices in 10 states. Cheyenne also serves as a board member at the Tool Library, a community-based resource lending library whose mission is to provide communities with the tools they need to create the change they want. Please help me in welcoming Cheyenne this evening. Thank you so much for Cheyenne for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Cheyenne, would you, so I have opened up the slide sharing. So if you have any slides or if you want to go ahead, we can start right ahead now.
Okay. Awesome. So I will share the screen now. All right. Are you able to see okay?
Yes, perfect.
All right, awesome. All right, so this is Masterclass Public Relations 101. So we're going to go over kind of like an introduction to public relations and how you can kind of use public relations when having a limited budget, like many entrepreneurs do, in order to get coverage for your product or your business. Prior to working at Goldberg Segura, I worked at the local Buffalo History Museum, and there's a lot of similarities between startups and nonprofits. You often have limited budgets. There's a lot of people wearing multiple hats. So it's kind of where I got my exposure into it, and public relations and earned media can be really powerful tools. So getting into the actual agenda, so we're going to start off with what is public relations, kind of defining it in a general sense. We'll get into the importance of earned media, some of the tools of the public relations trade, the art of the media pitch, which can be incredibly powerful. It's different than a pitch for funding, but very similar and kind of like your goals. And then getting into a couple of PR activities that you can kind of participate where you're at, but I will also walk through those as well. So getting to what is public relations. So PRSA defines public relations as the strategic communications process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their public. So that kind of sounds like a mouthful, but what it really is public relation feeds into the public perception of your business, organization, and the people involved with it. It's the management of how the public, meaning anyone who may become involved with your organization and form opinion about it, perceives your business and the people who are part of it. So the whole encompassing vision of what your organization is, your businesses, your products. With the 24/7 news cycle, social media and things like that, PR management and the public opinion are becoming more and more pertinent in the general lens. It's not just what the news is covering, it's what people are perceiving, what people, think about your organization and it's never ending. There can be breaking news at 3 a.m. So PR is more important than it's ever been. Public perception is more important than it's ever been, and it'll continue to grow in importance. And then going on to just kind of like some examples and where PR kind of fits into an organization or business. So public relations is part of pretty much every single inch of an organization's communications plan and your organizational decisions. You make a major decision, the public needs to know about it. It's a part of crisis communication, sharing news, whether it's good or bad, managing a company's brand, and more. PR is essential to maintaining a genuine perception of your business or company, but that's only if it's conducted in an ethical and accurate way. PR must be backed by the actual morals, beliefs, and actions of an organization. Otherwise, you're slipping into the realm of misinformation or disinformation, which PR professionals ideally should be fighting against that type of, conduction of communications. But PR can be especially helpful when working with a limited budget because it provides you with a powerful form of free content for your organization or your business or the people that work for it, which is called earned media. So, getting into the importance of earned media. Now, there's a lot of different definitions for earned media out there, but the biggest thing is that it's organic coverage about your business or company or the people that are a part of it. That means that it's not something you paid for, so it's not like an advertisement or an influencer sponsorship or any type of thing that you would have financial transaction to be able to have it conducted. That's paid media, that's not earned media. And it's not something that you as your organization or business puts out. So it's not something like a blog that you run or your website or brochures that you make. It's earned media. So examples for that include, unpaid podcast appearances, social media mentions from individuals that are not connected directly to your company, news show interviews, podcast appearances, like I said, but they have to be unpaid, and influencer shout outs that are not paid as well can be considered earned media. One of the good ways to generate earned media is through public relations. So not always will you get earned media from PR, and sometimes you can get earned media just completely unprompted. Someone will mention you on social and it'll be nice coverage. But using the tools of public relations trade, you can drum up a lot of interest with members of the media. So editors, reporters, TV show producers, and other miscellaneous media professionals. So that brings us into some of the tools of the trade that you can use to kind of garner attention while conducting PR. So here we kind of have a list of different tools. Some of them might look familiar to you, some of them might not. Press releases is probably the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of PR. It's very traditional, but it still has its place. So there are many tools in PR Professionals Toolkit. A press release is an easy way to share important newsworthy information to a lot of people at once. So, it's kind of like, you can think of it almost as like an email blast. People don't really mail press releases anymore. We're kind of past that stage with technology. But you might use a press release to share information about a new product or maybe a new major investor that you got into your startup. Media alerts or media invites can be used to invite members of the media to a certain event or media coverage opportunity. It typically covers the who, the what, the when, where, and why media should attend an event. That could be something like opening a new space or like a new office or revealing a new product to the public for the first time. A media invite could be a way to actually get people to come to cover that in real time. Media kits are packets often containing a number of useful items for members of the media in one go. That could be digitally or physically. It may include photos, videos, press releases, or pieces of owned media like annual reports or pamphlets. I'll give an example. Back when I was at the Buffalo History Museum, we had a media preview night of a newly restored space within the historic building. We had sent a media alert out to members of the media to come and tour the space while it was still under construction. And we also had like a little QR code pasted up that they could scan on their phone, and they could download a digital media kit that had photos of the space, video of the space, information about the funders of the reconstruction, things like that. So that's kind of how some of the tools of the trade can kind of fit together within PR. And while all these that we've talked about so far are great ways to spread news and hopefully earn some media coverage, one of the most tried and true methods to not only generate earned media, but also develop relationships with reporters and editors are one-on-one pitches. So it's not unlike pitches you might make to an investor, but you're pleading your case as to why media should focus on your product or business as opposed to others. So there's some competitiveness there. Members of the media only have so much space and time within their day to be able to cover things, so they have to prioritize, and you have to plead the case of why your thing or your business or your new announcement or whatever is what they should be covering and focusing on. But instead of giving you funds, however, currency for reporters and editors is what we call earned media. So this brings us into the art of the media pitch, which is the big meat of this, and it's a good way to get very dedicated, specific outreach for your organization, company, product, whatever you might be doing. So the art of the media pitch. So a quick rundown that you'll see on the slides here is like pitch topics when you're reaching out to a reporter or a producer, is that you can kind of pitch almost anything. That doesn't mean that you should pitch almost anything. So it should be relevant to the outlet's audience and the member of the media you're pitching. It should be timely and provide perspective on a trending hot topic, or it can produce a unique perspective on an evergreen topic. Sometimes timely and evergreen do line up, but if there's something that's really hot, that's trending, that you're the first on the scene, that's very significant. or if it's something that's been talked about a lot, but you provide a unique perspective on it, or a different, viewpoint, or a different industry, then you can pitch that as well, even if it's something that's been covered a lot. And pitches should be brief, but engaging and informative. You don't want to leave it so bare bones that the reporter or editor is like, what are you even talking to me about? You want to be descriptive, but you want to get to the point. So, a pitch is ideally a one-on-one outreach to a reporter, editor, producer, or any other member of a news or media outlet to convince them to produce coverage on a certain topic. So it could even be something not necessarily about your business or organization, but something that is relevant to you, so you can establish yourself as an expert within that field, or within that area of whatever you might be doing. So it makes you look a little bit more impressive, which may, appeal to potential funders for your business in the future. Majority of pitches nowadays are done via email. A lot of PR activity is done via email, to be quite honest. You obviously should include things like social media and branding and things like that within your PR activities. Really, they should all be intertwined at this point. We're kind of past the point where PR and social and email marketing are separate. They really all should be having a cohesive messaging together, even if the functionality of the jobs are different. But most of them are done via email, but opportunities may come up, if you're meeting someone at a networking event and it just so happens there to be a reporter. Just an example, Buffalo Business First very frequently has events that their reporters will attend, and you might meet someone naturally that way during a networking event. I've had media leads that have come up via social media DMs. Back when I worked at the History Museum, that's B2C, so directly to consumers, people who might come visit the History Museum. I had, DMs from reporters that were like, can we check out your new exhibit that we saw that you open tomorrow morning and do a quick show on it. So you will sometimes have social media leads as well, and you can pitch sometimes via social media. Some reporters might even prefer that. And while you might get coverage on almost any topic you wish to pitch out, in order for a pitch to be successful, it must be relevant to both the audience and the outlet itself. In other words, if you're a startup, for example, that's pioneering a new musical technology, you're better off pitching to a guitar magazine than you would be like a restaurant or culinary magazine, some of those more obvious things. There's benefit to being first on the scene. Again, timely, hot, trending topics. Like, for example, say, it's a huge development in the fintech space, financial technology space. And, for example, if your founder is, if your main company product is some type of like personal financial management app, you might want to pitch out your founder or maybe your head in research and development to discuss, this new emerging, thing within the fintech space. And if there is a topic that isn't breaking news, but you can provide a unique spin on it, you might be able to still find coverage for it. For example, like me, as someone who does a lot of writing in my job, ChatGPT has been everywhere. It'll continue to be everywhere. It's constantly evolving, and it's kind of been talked to death to some extent when it comes to news coverage. But that being said, maybe you can find a unique angle on it. Like, for example, maybe a unique industry perspective. Like if you are someone that works at a fashion startup, you might want to pitch your clothing designer about the implications of AI when it comes to fashion, or generating like your e-commerce, website or things like that. So there are ways that you can kind of still pitch or get in on something, even if you miss the boat of it being hot. It's just, finding what works within you and finding your niche, especially if you're a very specialized startup. You really want to find your niche publications. It's more important for you to get in front of the right audience with, the right focus than to get in front of a lot of people that are just not interested in what you're doing. For pitches, like the makeup of them themselves, pitches should not drag on and on. In fact, if you're sending one via email, it should be less than the paragraph I just spoke of now. It should max around 150 to 250 words on average. In rare instances, if you're in very, very niche, very technical or very specific fields, it might max out about 400 words, but really we're looking for 150 to 250. An email subject line itself shouldn't be over 10 to 15 words. However, it should be eye-catching. Again, it should be engaging, interesting, informative. You need to stand out. These reporters, especially for major things, like we're talking like New York Times or like a few like larger publications, we're talking about potentially thousands of pitches they'll get a day. You really need to stand out. It should be informative. It's important to also give them a call to action, such as scheduling an interview with an expert, or encouraging them to attend an event or a webinar that you might be hosting. It should really be minimal filler. It's a little unnatural to think about it because obviously in business communications, in all communications, ideally, you want to be courteous, respectful, and things like that. But really with reporters, again, because they're getting so much communication consistently, you want minimal filler, minimal pleasantries, unless you personally know that reporter and they like to have the fluff. Most of them just want you to get to the point to see if they care about it, if they should push it off to someone else, or if they should frankly ignore you. So, minimal filler, timeliness, if you can get on top of things sooner rather than later, that's important. The information should be intriguing, it should be engaging, even if it's something that's a little bit more dry or technical. Most reporters are very well versed within their field, so they want to know specifically what you're going to provide them. They want to know, they want the details. You should personalize it still, though. You should address them directly. Please do not ever send a pitch that says, "Dear insert first name." There are a lot of different automated tools like Muckrack and Cision that you can use to automatically send in mass pitches to reporters. Just remember to actually fill in their names. That can happen with any automation software. It can happen with email marketing too. You want that personalization, at least you're better off putting the personalization in and taking those extra minutes, as opposed to putting in the wrong name or putting in no name and then, potentially burning a bridge with that reporter for a significant period of time when it could have taken you, an extra 30 seconds to double check their name. And courtesy go a long way in compiling a pitch too, being understanding of the reporter, what they cover, if they're busy, if they need to reschedule. Again, journalists are bombarded and swamped with communications. That's not just to be discouraging, but that's just to know that you need to refine your pitch before you send it out. And then we're going to get into some examples of pitches and we'll kind of look at that a little bit. So this is an example of a bad pitch. And you'll notice that we kind of named the section of this presentation the art of the pitch because it is more of an art than it is direct science. I mean, there are statistical things and averages, like a certain pitch length that works better, a certain number of words in a subject line that work better on average. But each pitch is unique. But there are some things objectively about a pitch that could be bad. So this is me, sending a pitch to someone named Amy Stevens at Ketter magazine, and it's something in relation to ChatGPT. And it says, "Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Would you like to talk to our director of e-commerce about ChatGPT? Let me know. Thanks." And then, my email signature. And the thing is that while brevity is good when it comes to pitches, this is a particular instance when it's really too brief. It's not giving, what is unique, what are we specifically talking about. I don't even put the name of the director of e-commerce in here or what we're going to talk about with the actual topic itself. There is a call to action. Would you like to talk to our director of e-commerce about ChatGPT? But it's not substantial enough to really give them meat where it would stick out. For all I know, this is the 4th or 5th ChatGPT pitch email that they've gotten today. So it's like, what am I putting in here that's really going to stick out to them to make them say, you know what, I really do want to take time out of my day to talk to the director of e-commerce because I think it's something our audience would be interested in. And I think that it is something, I want to learn more about from this person, and they've established themselves as an expert. The subject line is bad. It's one word. That's not enough. 10 to 15, maybe a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit longer, but it's not giving, I'm interested in this. It's engaging. And there's a lot of pleasantries in the beginning too, like the "Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well." Again, it might seem counterintuitive, but those are not really the types of things that reporters are looking for unless you personally know that reporter and they appreciate the pleasantries. Most of them want you to get to the point. You don't have to be rude, but you want to be direct and informative and really get their attention and get their focus early on. So now we have one that's what I would say is probably a good example. It could probably be refined a little bit more from beyond this, but it's the same type of scenario. We're emailing Amy Stevens at Ketter magazine, and we have a subject line that says ChatGPT in black dresses. Neither are going out of style anytime soon. It says, "Hello, Amy." So there is a hello pleasantry, but it's straight to the point. It Says, I really enjoyed your article last month on top 10 tech tips for online fashion brands. So that's a little bit of personalization. It shows that you did research on your reporter and you're pulling back, what your pitch is about to something that they've already covered. Shows you have interest, respect for their topic, and the types of things that they like to be engaged with. And then we get into this. It says, if you're looking for a follow-up piece and a deeper dive into ChatGPT, our director of e-commerce at Diva Designs, Sarah Jefferson, has been championing the use of AI company-wide. With using it so extensively, we have had some lessons learned and tips that your readers might be interested in, such as how the AI assists copy editors, ChatGPT's integration with our other AI technologies, product descriptions in ChatGPT, productivity and click-through metric growth following ChatGPT integration, implications of ChatGPT on the broader fashion industry. If speaking with Sarah would be of interest to you, please let me know and we can arrange time that works for the both of you. Thank you for your time, Amy, and then email signature. So this is within the right character limit, 150 to 250 words. It gives, it establishes, first of all, the potential contact's name. So say, for example, if the reporter sees this and they're kind of interested, they might look up the director of e-commerce on LinkedIn, find a little bit more information about her, do her own research before she responds to the pitch. You're giving her more to respond to, this particular reporter. You're giving more engagement and getting into the specific bullet points. You don't always have to have bullet points in a pitch, but if you're thinking there might be a dialogue or a longer conversation between the reporter and the particular subject, a bullet pointed list is a nice way to kind of summarize it and break up the information, make the email a little bit more digestible. If you have like 3 blocks of paragraph, 1, you probably have too much text in your pitch and you need to cut it down. 2, it's a little bit harder for the reporter to skim it. Again, you're competing for their limited time when they have a ton of stuff and a ton of outreach that's being conducted to them. So you really want to get straight to the point, get specific, and break up and make the information digestible while still being informative. So this could definitely be improved upon, but I think that it's a good start for a pitch that is specific. It's maybe not necessarily as timely, although I know ChatGPT more recently has been updated, so maybe somewhat semi-timely. But it's got kind of like a clever, subject line that's relevant to the publication. It's Couture magazine, so you can kind of assume that it's fashion brands, a fashion, magazine. Black dresses, classic black dress. Again, it's called the art of a media pitch because it's not like a fast and hard rule to do it. You kind of have to get clever with the English language. You have to, know your subject that you're pitching out, know your expert that you're pitching out within your organization or company, or even yourself if you're doing outreach for you to be interviewed about something. And you have to know the outlet, judging by this intro, sentence right here, it shows that you as a person and as a professional have respected the reporter's time and energy by reading up on what they've covered before, and you're pulling that into what's relevant to the coverage that you can offer now. If you're ever able to make a connection like that, is incredibly powerful. It can also arm the person that you are having being interviewed with some prerequisite understanding of how the reporter works, what types of questions they might ask, things like that. So really doing your research before you pitch out is it can be pretty much more important than the content of the pitch itself. Obviously, if you send an awful pitch like the first one we just showed, doesn't matter who you're sending it to, you're probably not going to get coverage. But it's important, again, to have the proper audience and the proper outlet and the proper reporter, So that's kind of like this for good pitch example. We are going to get into some PR activities. Not sure exactly how this is going to work, but we'll go through it. And then we'll kind of go through there. And then we'll get into some resources and other things. And then I'm not sure if we have any students here that could actually ask questions or engage at all. But if there are any, feel free to at any time. So just these are kind of like recaps of what we've gone over. And this is like a real world example of something that you might have to do or you might face within the PR role, decisions you might have to make. So this first activity is which publication? And it says you're responsible for pitching your head cybersecurity engineer about an emerging safety app your company has developed for e-commerce businesses. Where would you pitch them? And we have a selection of publications here. There's Retail Today, Cyber Defense Magazine, and Wired. And then D is all of the above. And then if you're watching this recorded, pause for a second. If you're not aware of the publications or anything like that, maybe do a quick Google search, go and give yourself like a look over the publications themselves and kind of what they cover and things like that. Obviously, you know, if you were actually doing this, you'd have a little bit more context and information, but realistically speaking, the answer would be D. It would be all of the above are proper outlets to potentially pitch this to. When it comes to researching publications and pitching out individuals for topic discussions, there's many different angles you can take. If we're looking at the situation here, you have cybersecurity, and a cybersecurity engineer, so someone who would be an expert within the space of cyber defense. So that's where the appeal might be for the Cyber Defense Magazine. It's a safety app, so it's emerging technology. Wired very frequently covers emerging technologies, new applications, a lot of different varying things, everything from AI to like, I think robotics and other things like that. So it could be appealing to Wired because it's a new type of technology. And then Retail Today because it's for e-commerce businesses. So it's kind of like, you know, there's a lot of choice that goes into it and a lot of subjectivity, because here you have 3 possibly compelling leads of publications, which is great to have because, you know, if you shop it to one person and they're like not really interested, you can shop it to another, but you have to use your discretion as a PR professional to be like, what is the best audience for us? You know, looking at this, you know, D, all of them could be viable and they all could be pitched at. But since maybe our audience is e-commerce businesses, maybe we'll go to Retail Today because that's where our potential clients are at, you know, but maybe we're just trying to get and recruit more cyber engineers. And we know Cyber Defense Magazine is, you know, a big part of the readership are people who are already within the cyberspace. Maybe we want our security engineer to be interviewed there because it shows, you know, potential talent. This is a new emerging company with a great expert that you can learn stuff from. You should really join us. You know, so it really depends on what your goals are as an organization, what your goals are for the activity, and what your goals are overarchingly. Again, PR like wells itself into pretty much every avenue of an organization because it is how you are perceived by anyone that could come in contact with you. And that is, you know, potential recruitees, you know, potential employees, funders, the general public, you know, clients, past clients, current clients, new clients. So it's very important to just keep those in mind when you're thinking about what publication, what is the end goal, who you're trying to reach, and what is most relevant to the reporter and the outlet that you're reaching out to. So a lot of information there, a lot of different things to consider when you're doing it, but when you consider all of the things, you know, you can go and do some outreach that can be really, really compelling and, you know, can really, you know, get some fantastic coverage for your organization. And one of the things that we didn't talk about yet, but is, you know, the life of earned media. If say you get an interview with Retail Today and, you know, you could take that article and you could post it on social media about it, be like, here's this amazing coverage from our cybersecurity engineer giving some amazing insight. You know, if you're in the e-commerce space, you should really take a look at this interview, you know, so it can feed into your social media and some of your owned media after that fact. So there's a lot of things that it can be. It's not just the pitch and the story coverage. There's a lot of life to it after the fact. And then getting into this next activity. So this says new CEO. So your company has evaluated a new chief executive officer. Which tool of the PR trade would you use to spread the information to as many members of the media as possible, as quickly as possible? So the first one is media invite, then it's a pitch, then press release, and then press conference. And if you go back to kind of like our slides earlier, you know, you can kind of see all the different types of things and where they fit in. But in this particular instance, the key thing here is as many members of media as possible, as quickly as possible. You would want to do a press release in this particular instance. Now, realistically speaking, if you're unveiling or introducing a new CEO, especially if it's like a public-facing CEO that might be doing interviews and representing your company and recruiting funders, you know, you could do, you know, a press conference and then do a media invite to invite media to that press conference. But one of the things that you run the risk of, especially depending on, you know, what your industry is, where you are, located, how many outlets or publications that there are in your particular area or field. When you do a media event, you run the risk of, non-attendance, which sometimes might be good. Sometimes there's something to be said having a media event that feels very exclusive. And you can kind of have maybe deeper relationships with reporters if they do show up. But if your goal is to get it to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, email is the way to go, and email press release is the way to go. Just because that there really is, again, it's that balancing act, those things you have to consider. If this was an activity where it said, new product, and it was something that was like very engaging, like say it was like a new super hyper realistic, like children's toy or something, you'd probably want to do a press conference and media invite, because you want people to be able to engage with that particular product that you're selling. You want people to be able to see it in person and reveal it. And there's a lot of visualness there. But with this, you'd probably send just a press release, maybe a quote from, your board of trustees, if you have a board, within the press release, and then a headshot for the new chief executive officer, and then all the information about them and their qualifications. So that's kind of where this kind of lands. Again, it really depends on what your goals are. If you really want to push the face of the person out there, or you want them to provide like new real-time quotes about what it means to them to lead the organization and things like that, then you probably would want to do a press conference so they could do a live Q&A after. Or you could do, the press release first, and then follow up with reporters that are particularly like good friends of your organization or company, and have them, do an exclusive interview now with your new chief executive officer. There's so many different ways the different tools of PR can fit into each other, that it really is up to the discretion of both, what makes the most sense, where are your relationships in regards to different reporters, how comfortable are the potential subjects. Like, you're never as, talented and gifted as someone might be within your organization. If they are not comfortable and they are not media trained, they might not be good to pitch out for an interview. You might be better off getting them some media training first and take an opportunity further down the line. So they really all can kind of fit in different ways. It really is up to the discretion also of your capacity as well. If you only have time and capacity to send press releases and you can't focus on a one-on-one pitch at a particular given time, you can still get earned media from that. You focus your energy and make really, really good press releases then. And then when you have the capacity to do one-on-one pitches, you do. And this is going to be our last activity. So I would recommend for the people that are watching this recording after the fact, once I'm done speaking, to pause and pull out your phone and set up a timer for 5 minutes. And this is a pitch subject line activity. So you're responsible for pitching the main star of a new prehistoric zombie show. It's called The First of Us. No pun intended. I'm sure a lot of people were watching a particularly, hot zombie show not that long ago. But you're pitching the main star of a new prehistoric zombie show called The First of Us to Entertainment Weekly for an interview about the show. So you're pitching a new star. So the task in 5 minutes: draft an email subject line you would use to pitch the interview and put it in the chat, or, comment it on the YouTube video if you're watching. And I'm going to give myself some time to think about it. And then I will share what I come up with in a certain amount of time. So, and I'll also put it in the chat too. Let's see. So what I put for my email subject line is: step aside, Pedro Pascal, zombies are going Stone Age. And it is a little cheesy, don't get me wrong, but you think about the context around the email subject line. That is going to be the very first thing that a reporter or an editor or producer sees, is your email subject line. 99% of the time, most pitches are done that way. In almost any industry, it's done via email. It's just more convenient for pretty much everyone to do that. So in this particular one, there's already some buying power because you have you know, a TV show that already happened. You can tie it into a, you know, a trending actor that's relevant to it, you know, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of punny. You know, not all email, you know, subject lines for pitches are going to be fun or funny or punny. The two that I showed here were, but, you know, working at a law office, sometimes we're pitching, you know, things that are very heavy, but you can still be engaging about it, you know. So you might be pitching, you know, some horrible, you know, like data breach security issue happened, you know, and again, going back to that, you know, cybersecurity app example, you know, you don't necessarily want to be like overly punny with a subject like that. It's a very serious matter, especially if you're reaching out to a reporter that, you know, might be involved or have contacts that might have been impacted by some negative news. You know, you want to make sure that you're respectful of that, but you also want to grab their attention and establish yourself as like, we're an expert in this. We know what we're talking about. You know, a substantial part of PR and public relations is really information spreading and sharing. That's why, you know, I said very early on, it needs to be backed by values, actions, and morals of your organization. Because if not, people will know, you know, and then you'll have a bigger PR issue. So it's really about knowing your audience, you know, knowing the context around the pitch that you're sending, you know, say like 6 months prior to now, or even prior to that, maybe if I was pitching something like this, a prehistoric zombie show, maybe I wouldn't have used Pedro Pascal on the subject because maybe he wasn't as big of a thing and he was more associated with Star Wars at that time. So maybe something else would have made more sense. Maybe some pun with like The Walking Dead if it was leading to the end of that series at that time. So those things to keep in mind is that like you can sometimes pull in, like I've seen pitches that have like had to do with like tech development and they've used like Tony Stark, you know, in the subject line. I know we're using pop culture things and it doesn't need to be just pop culture, but you know, again, it is in and of itself its own art form. So be creative with it, you know, give it some time. You know, I think for me personally, whenever I draft pitches, I'm very fortunate enough to work with another PR professional in my current position. And I will bounce ideas off of him. I'll send him my draft pitch and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And I think, you know, even if you don't have another PR professional with you, sometimes that can be even better because there's someone coming in completely fresh, not from the PR lens, that can look at it and be like, I really don't understand what you're getting here, or be like, oh, wow, I'm actually really interested in this. Tell me more. So those types of things that you can kind of keep in mind when you are pitching out, you know, again, knowing your audience, knowing the context in the world around the pitches that you're doing, really just, you know, it really is about finding that niche again, because you are competing with a lot of different spaces and audiences. And, you know, one other thing that we haven't talked about that I think is very important is depending on what your goal is, can also help you very much so tailor and narrow down what publication or reporters you're reaching out to when it comes to something. Like for this, it's Entertainment Weekly. That makes sense. It's going to be a TV show that the general public is going to look at. It's Entertainment Weekly. A television interview or a YouTube interview with their digital platform makes a ton of sense. But, you know, if you are a business that's selling to another business, a trade publication magazine might make more sense. You know, it really just depends. And even if the readership is only 20,000 people, if 5% of them end up wanting to use your product or learn more about it, that's better than getting on, you know, your local TV news station where you get no traction from it, or you don't meet the goal for that particular PR outreach. So it really is, you know, a lot of research going into what you're going to do, who you're going to reach out to, and really finding out what your goals are. And your PR goals, this is probably very obvious, but your PR goals should be very much so aligned with the rest of your organization. You know, you are the public facing figure, you know, or you're either the public facing figure or you're the person that's providing the public facing information to someone else within your organization. Odds are if you're a startup or an entrepreneur, you're probably going to be doing a decent chunk of PR yourself, both the back end of PR and also the actual interviews and things like that. So again, finding that niche, really, you know, being considerate of the outlet and the reporter you're reaching out to, you know, taking the time to do your research. A good cultivated pitch that gets you a really good article is worth a dozen of not really relevant, not really good pitches and interviews. You know, it really is in my opinion, PR really is about the quality of the coverage, not the quantity. You know, you want, if you get one really good article per quarter per year, and it's good and you like it and you're meeting your goals with it and you're involving, you know, the community in it, and you have a good public perception, that's worth a lot more than getting, you know, an article a week that's kind of meh or isn't really getting in front of the same audience, or, you know, forbid is bad PR, you know. We did mention crisis communications because obviously PR is a part of that as well. So that takes us to the conclusion. You know, I would say that this is kind of like just a general overarching view of PR. There's a lot of different facets to it. Like I said, PR is meant to prop up and be intertwined with everything from email marketing to crisis communications, to social media, to, you know, influencer marketing, you know, to pretty much every section of your organization. Like even things that might not be as relevant or might not be as obvious as, for example, you know, if you lose a major investor, there's going to be, you know, PR concerns about it, you know, just as if you gain a massive investor. So it really is, you know, it's not, there's a science behind it, like the analytics of PR, you know, how much coverage are you getting? What's the quality of the coverage that you're getting? You know, making sure that you're getting to the right audiences and things like that. So there is analytics behind it, just like any other, you know, field. You want to make sure that you measure what you're doing and how you're interacting. But a lot of PR is also experimentation. It's figuring out what works, what doesn't work. You know, who is your general audience? Who are some of the niche publications? It's a lot of experimentation. You know, I went from a history museum to a law firm. It is completely different, you know, but the basic attributes of PR, the research, the looking into the reporters, the tailoring your messaging, you know, getting well versed in the language of what you're pitching, you know, and I mean in a literal way. Like I have dictionaries with me. I have an AP style guide that I reference, you know, things like that, to maybe get a little bit more clever with the subject line, or maybe, you know, I use a particular word too many times in this pitch or this press release. Let me find a new one. You know, there's a lot of research that goes behind it, but sometimes you just have to tinker things and see how people respond to them. The nice thing with PR is it's always constantly evolving with your organization. So as you have new opportunities arise, there's new PR activities and things you can experiment with. So beyond this, to do a little bit more learning, I have a couple resources here that kind of delve into different topics, or maybe delve into broader things, or might be good if you want to learn more about PR, and if you want to connect with other PR professionals besides myself. So I know I pulled the quote about the definition of PR from the Public Relations Society of America. They do have local chapters. Buffalo has a local chapter, and I believe there's a student membership as well. They host events, networking events, tangible like classes and courses. I once took a crisis communications class with them. That was absolutely fantastic and very comprehensive. So I would highly recommend, if you do want to get interested in PR and learn more about it as a field and get some tangible skills within the space before you might have an internship or a job, prsa.org, on Public Relations Society of America. If I could recommend one particular thing to research and look into, that would be it. There's a lot of different companies out there that offer different public relations tools like media monitoring or press release distribution. But in addition to the paid services that they offer, a lot of them offer free resources and research into the PR field and journalism field in and of itself. So one of these is like Muckrack. They have something called Muckrack Academy that has like an intro course to PR and a couple other courses that gives you like a little in-depth look into, you know, precursors of PR, and then also some of the topics that we talked about, maybe a different lens and a different light. They also offer they do a ton of research within the PR field and the journalism field as like a job and career itself, even beyond like doing the job, but like what is the state of public relations? What is the state of journalism in this year? So I would highly recommend it if you want to get a little bit more general information and a precursor, and maybe to even explore if a career in public relations might be for you, or if public relations might be something you want to pursue a little bit more heavily as an entrepreneur, if you want to add that skill set underneath all the other work that you're doing, of course. Muck Rack, I would recommend also looking to the resources. Agility PR is actually UK based PR resource and company. They offer similar tools that Muck Rack does, so like media monitoring and I think also press release distributions, but they have a ton of countless webinars and other useful resources that are very tangible, like things about like the length of a media pitch and like what's more successful, this or that. They also have a blog that's very compelling that has very interesting information that I could also recommend. And of course, there's many resources available with a quick Google search. At the end of the day, it's really, PR is a very compelling tool. Earned media is the most compelling content you can probably get because it's not something you create yourself. It's not something that you purchase. It is earned media. You were able to plead your case enough and establish yourself enough as much of an expert or as interesting as possible, where people are like, wow, more people should learn about this. It sounds pretty like basic, but that is what it is at the end of the day. And obviously as an entrepreneur, or an up-and-coming student, whatever you're working on can be incredibly compelling to the right reporter and editor. And it really is, not unlike doing fund pitches. It's just taking it through a different lens and really getting that traction around you. And it can really be a gift that keeps on giving. It doesn't end when you get that news article and coverage. That reporter may hit you up in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 years. I had one reporter that took 6 months to get back to me, but you want to know what? We had a really cool story after it, so it really just depends. But, I would highly recommend looking into some of these resources. Even just a press release when you're getting started up as a business or a company can mean a lot. It can do a lot for you in establishing yourself, whether in the local community, regional, or even in national publications, depending on what you're doing and what your goals are. So that is the end of the presentation. I encourage, if you have any questions about anything that I brought up during this conversation or presentation, my email address is right there. I also encourage all students to add me on LinkedIn. Please do not hesitate. I'd be happy to discuss more with you, delve into something deeper or explain a little bit more than what we discussed today. But again, thank you so much. My name is Cheyenne Ketter Franklin, and this was Public Relations 101.
Thank you, Shan.
Of course.
Shan, we do have a couple of questions in the room right now.
Sure.
I think we'll start with Jason. Yeah? Or do you want to go first?
Of course. So one of the OG questions that we had from the beginning was, ChatGPT is a new upcoming thing, and I know that a lot of organizations are using it to make press releases. I heard about a college that used it and was caught actually. How does ChatGPT affect you? Do you think at some point your job will be replaced by ChatGPT, or do you think that eventually you guys are going to start integrating it into how you guys work?
I think, and this is my, conjecture. And it's actually interesting because at my current job, I use Muck Rack at my own job to do like media monitoring and press release distribution. And they actually just rolled out their own AI development that is tied, it's like powered by ChatGPT to generate press releases. One of the conversations I have even in personal life outside professional is like, right now AI is as bad as it's going to be, so it's only going to get better. And while that can be kind of intimidating, I think that especially at this stage, there's a certain human element that goes into decision making that I don't think AI is to the point of replacing it. It's that research behind it. Like the research into what outlets you're doing, things like that. My coworker has used ChatGPT a couple times, just to get some general idea for structure for press releases, but then he goes and writes off his own thing. Some of the most compelling information within press releases is things like quotes and if you're working with someone and their personality very well and the way that they speak in their dictation, odds are you're going to be able to develop a better quote that really aligns with the person and their own particular voice than AI can. But for me personally, I see it as a tool, much like anything else. I mean, again, we start off the presentation when we were talking about press releases. They used to send them via mail. We don't anymore. We send them via email, and the industry adjusted to compensate that. So I think, if anything else, it provides another form of developing, what's what I'm looking for? Developing content, and it's another tool to kind of bounce ideas off of. But I think we're a ways away from getting rid of the human element, just because there's so much research that goes into finding publications. There's so many research that goes into, getting the correct quote from an executive, for example. So at this point, I'm not like raising like a white flag and be like, oh no, what am I doing? But I think it is just a tool, and I think industries will adapt for it. And I think for me personally, if it gets to a point where it can completely generate press releases that are, of amazing quality, that's great. That'll just change the field of how PR works. We'll refocus on something different. We'll always want to have that little bit of human element to the press release or whatever media outlet we're doing or media outreach that we're doing on top of it. So for me, I think it's a tool. I personally have not used AI a ton in my current position, just because it's not really necessary for what I do right now. It's not necessarily like an insanely major time saver for me, but it could be something powerful and useful for others. But I would also highly recommend, if you are someone that's trying to do it and save time, always give stuff a look over, like with anything, like human minds glitch and like mess up and have issues. So like this AI technology does too. It's incredibly powerful and a little scary, but it can always have hiccups and issues with it. So never, ever, ever generate a press release or a media thing from like any type of platform and just send it. You always want to give it some extra looks over, even if it is a very good rendition. You always want to review and revise things. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. That's my own unique perspective. I'm also in legal marketing, which is its own kind of niche form of marketing and public relations. It's B2B because I work for a business law firm. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think ChatGPT can be a useful tool for some folks. And I think it can help, but I also think that the industry will shift and evolve as technology supports it differently.
Awesome. Thank you. Jason, you want to take a second go?
Sure. So startup entrepreneurs, right? I know you talked about some ways that the PR can help us, but can you talk about maybe some of your experience in PRs, some like your own experience, how it can positively and maybe negatively happen, affect the entrepreneur, especially student ones and young entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I would say, so I'll use example from when I was at the History Museum. I'll start with a positive example. Back when COVID happened, when it first started that March, and I remember doing the social media post where I was like, the museum's going to be closed for 2 weeks. That obviously didn't happen. It was closed until August. But we had launched, because I was an essential employee, the main form that we were able to communicate with the general public was public relations and social media. And we had launched a digital collecting initiative called Chronicling COVID-19. And we were accepting mailed packages, digital photos, other things into the museum's collection to be able to chronicle everything that was happening with COVID and make sure that, all the stories and experiences that people are having in quarantine or being sick are not being lost to time. So you can hear my PR professional coming out as I speak about it. But we had done a press release for it, and the onslaught of coverage that we got was astronomical. I'm talking about, I had like 3 or 4 interviews for like multiple days in a row. And I'm not normally the person doing the interviews. It was like me and the executive director were like tag teaming. It was great because it was a new initiative for us. It was obviously very topical and timely. Like you couldn't get more timely at that point, but it was also a unique angle because it was not just like, it was somewhat of like a lighter topic in regards to what was going on at the world. It was, we're a historical institution. We're not doing medical research. We're not doing this, but we're making sure that people aren't being forgotten in what they're going through and that people down the line can understand this. So for me, that was a very positive experience. And it was very simple. It was literally just a press release that was like, we're accepting, digital collections, here are links to where you can do it. All that stuff, was very straightforward, but that was a textbook example of, it was timely, it was a unique angle, and it was relevant to the outlets that we're reaching out to. So it was very localized to Buffalo and Western New York because it's the Buffalo History Museum. So we had sent it to WGRZ, WIVB, the Buffalo News, those types of outlets. So it was very regional specific coverage. But it was cool. It was nice PR coverage. Trying to think about a negative instance with PR. I think, so this isn't so much like a personal example, but I think that, there's something to be said about knowing when it's appropriate for you to kind of speak your piece when it comes to things with PR. The best way that I can say it is for lack of a better term, the kind of staying in your lane. There are sometimes instances where organizations really shouldn't comment on something, and then they do, and then it becomes a PR disaster. Especially there have been a lot of different things that have happened on a societal level that are continuously happening that, no, it doesn't make sense for the soda brand to comment on it. It doesn't make sense for, XYZ to do this. So I think from that standpoint, when it comes to negative PR coverage, you really have to stick to the facts and be very straightforward about it. There are some, although in my opinion, it's very rare that this should happen, there are some instances where it does not make sense for you to respond and you just wait it out. You just pause your social media, you tell the social media team, stop. We're not posting anything for a while. Let's give people time to calm down and have some serious conversations internally. So that can be a particular thing. It's rare, in my opinion. It's better to, especially if there's an element of misinformation, like someone misconstrues a part of I remember on Twitter before when I was at the History Museum, there was someone that thought an artifact was part of the History Museum's collection and it wasn't. And I was and they were really mad about it. And I was this doesn't belong to our museum. Sorry, but this actually belongs to this museum, or I can't remember exactly how it went. And had we not responded to that, it could have spiraled into a whole brigade of anger on Twitter, But I think that when it comes to negative press or coverage, you want to be factual, you want to be straightforward. And if there were mistakes that were made, obviously consult any type of legal consultation you have, but or that you can acquire. I know that there are different resources, especially as an entrepreneur in a startup. There are different legal associations and things like that do that work with nonprofits to provide smaller businesses and individuals with legal counsel. Highly recommend that. When it comes to certain public statements, especially if it's something that is particularly sensitive and might have legal repercussions, you want legal counsel, but you also want to be straightforward, honest, candid, and factual. You don't want to get heated. You don't want to be overly emotional. You do not want to get if there was a brand that you super admired, or an actor or celebrity or a TV show or something that you super admired, think about it from the standpoint of maybe they messed up, or they did something that was kind of insensitive, or they made a bad decision, or the show got canceled. Would you rather they kind of take it with grace and be sorry, this is what happened, this is why this decision happened, or would you rather see them arguing with people in the comments on Instagram? Realistically speaking, what looks better? Some of it's kind of just obvious. If it seems like it would look bad from coming from someone else, then don't do it. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's kind of just, some of it is I think it's easy to overthink it, and obviously, again, you want to take in consideration, especially if it gets in the realm again of legal concerns. You want to consult the proper people first that know a little bit more about the specifications of the potential blowback from you saying something. But just kind of use I don't want to say use common sense, because that's not necessarily helpful, but you just want to think about it externally. How might reporters perceive this message we're putting out? What are they thinking about us now? Are they angry at us? Does it make sense for us to even reach out? Or does it make sense for us to be quiet for a little while? So I hope that helps answer your question a little bit. I apologize, I couldn't think of an example off the top of my head. But that's kind of with negative PR, you really just want to be factual, straight to the point, honest, and, do better next time. That's pretty much where it is, at this point. But yeah, I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, just a comment. I think you did a really good job for all the entrepreneurs here to help us kind of see what we can expect with PR. I think it's definitely something interesting, and we don't get a lot of exposure to it. So I appreciate all that you've done today.
Of course. And like I said, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. And I'm telling you, like, even if like you're like, I want to write a press release and I don't know where to start, please reach out to me, because it's like it sounds old school and old fashioned, but especially when you're first starting out, it's a good way to get used to like establishing your voice, your brand, your kind of like the perception of how you want to project yourself in a broader scale, and in most instances, unless you really mess up, odds are you're just not going to get coverage. Like that's the worst. Usually that's like the worst possible thing, and I feel like especially as entrepreneurs and startups, young people that are really working in the community and building your skill sets and things like that, majority of the news outlets that you're going to speak to are going to be interested and they're going to be on your side. Like, unless you see the title investigative journalist, majority of the time, they're going to be a little bit more on your side. Investigative journalists might also be on your side, but they do tend to do more intense exposés and things like that. But usually like standard reporters and editors, they're usually looking for interesting pieces, things like that, especially if say like you win a massive pitch competition and now you want to try and pitch yourself out for an interview, those are what we kind of call fluff pieces. And that's not to undersell it, but they're doing it because they want something that's going to look good and feel good to their audience. That's not bad. It's just kind of what it is, which will also change kind of the messaging around it. But seriously, please feel free to reach out to me. There's a lot you can do with just having a couple PR tools, having like a nice brochure put together, having, some nice boilerplate language, reaching out to a couple, even just reaching out to the general newsrooms, you might get some traction on stuff. So, yeah, no, but thank you. I appreciate it. Always happy to help.
Awesome. So Cheyenne, we are at time right now. So I think we will catch up.
She wants to do PR. She has to ask me questions.
Awesome. No.
Okay, I have just a few questions. Okay, right? So, right, you mentioned before us a lot, right? So like you work with a team often, I'm guessing, right?
Mhm.
So what is your specific, okay, it's a multifaceted question, okay, right? So obviously you joined PR, you went to college, I'm guessing, for public relations, or you had that in your life at the point. When you entered PR, was it your original idea? Was it your original goal? And then adding to that, what do you do? You said that you worked at a museum and now you work at so museum, I'm guessing, is business to consumer, and this law you said is business to business, right? So how does your specific skill set transfer to both these different ways of communicating with the customer, and how do you balance it?
Yeah, definitely. So I did UB's 3-2 program. So I was a business administration undergrad, and then I skipped my senior year and then did my MBA. So I was class of 2017 and class of 2018. And I was actually not in PR. I was actually in marketing research and analytics. But I had done an internship at the Darwin Martin House, which is also in Buffalo, in my last semester of grad school. And I was like, oh, the arts and cultural scene is kind of cool. Like, I maybe my skills could be used for this. And then I saw during spring break, I saw the communications content coordinator position posting at the Buffalo History Museum. I looked at it, I was like, I don't know if I'm qualified. They want people that have work experience, but let me give it a shot. And shout out to the Career Resource Center, through the School of Management. I know there are other career centers that are at UB. They sat with me to go over my cover letter and everything. And I had that job before I graduated, and it was comprehensive. It was, again, very massive similarities between startups, entrepreneurships, and nonprofits. Is I was the communications person when I went to the History Museum. So there was not a marketing team. It was me and a graphic designer for a certain number of hours during the week, and that was it. You know, obviously I could bounce ideas off of like the development team and our executive director, but the nice thing about this and why I would always recommend if you can to work or potentially volunteer at a nonprofit is because you wear a lot of different hats, you get exposed to a lot of different facets of things. So like I was doing communications. So I was doing the email marketing, I was doing the social media, I was doing the public relations. Public relations was only one portion of my job. And then, you know, I was doing other different things that are, you know, unique to nonprofits, like research into like grant stuff and looking over grant language and helping with appeal letters and things like that. And I found for me personally, I got the most validation and interest and excitement out of doing the PR aspect of my job. Which is something I appreciated about being at the History Museums. It exposed me to so many different things, and it's an incredibly cool organization. But it exposed me to so many different facets of the communications and marketing world that it really helped me refine my interests and passion. Like when I did that chronicling COVID-19, like rapid fire news interview, I was like, I liked it a lot and I felt compelled because I'm like, you know, there's all these awful things going on right now in the world and perpetually is. But I'm able to use my skill set to share this information with people, to keep people informed, to give them something to hope for, to, you know, it just, to me, I really enjoyed it. And there's a lot of validation about, you know, working really hard on a press release, sending it out and, you know, seeing that news story that night on like Channel 2. Like there's just something for me personally that I find very validating about that. And there's a lot of work behind it. And when you're working with a limited budget, you know, when you're working with limited budget, every news coverage is like, that's money saved. That's promotion I don't have to do for that event. That's, you know, social media advertising I don't have to do. Like some of the, depending on the news outlet that you're doing, one news interview might be worth $120,000 ad buy, like unironically, like that can be, some news coverage can be so incredibly compelling. So for me, that was kind of how I got into PR and found my interest in it. The law firm, you know, was definitely not super expected. It's obviously very different, the arts and cultural world. But, you know, I'm now the senior PR communications coordinator. So I am focused on PR specifically. So I don't really do social or, you know, website management or things like that right now. I do public relations. And the skills that were transferable were the ones that are kind of like more generic that would really be useful in almost any job, you know, in a PR field. It's things like researching publications. It's things like monitoring media. It's something as simple as setting up Google Analytics for the proper communication terms and outlets and topics to see who's covering what. Could they potentially be interested in covering something for us? You know, it's networking with reporters. It's, you know, bumping elbows a little bit, going to networking events, talking to so-and-so reporter and be like, oh, you covered that. That's interesting. I know so-and-so that can talk about that, you know, and those are relevant to whether you're doing business to consumer or you're doing business to business. The things are just different. The outlets are different, but at the end of the day, when you're doing PR, you're communicating with people. That's like what it is. Like it's through a certain funnel and lens, but you're keeping in mind the reporter that you're speaking to and who that reporter is speaking to. And when you work with that lens, it makes sense regardless of what you're doing. So whether I'm doing a press release for the History Museum about an exhibit opening, or I'm pitching an attorney out about a new legislation that just passed to a legal publication that, you know, maybe only publishes 2 times a year, you know, at the end of the day, there's people at every single step, and you have to keep that in mind when you're doing it. You know, don't waste anyone's time. I know it sounds like generic in general, but it's like, and don't waste your own time. You know, don't put a lot of effort into a pitch or an outreach that doesn't make sense. So I think for me, it's just holding on to those tangible skills and consistently learning. PR, you know, obviously we just had a conversation about ChatGPT. PR is a constantly evolving space to consider. So you got to keep the education up. Education and learning and things like that do not end when you graduate and get your degree. In fact, like it amplifies and it specializes because now you're focusing in on something that you want to do. You're focusing on a particular business, organization, industry. You know, you really start to hone your skills. So I think for me, you know, back when I first started, writing a press release probably would have taken me 3, maybe possibly 4 hours. You know, I didn't have formalized press release writing capacity. Now I'm like 30 minutes, here you go, review it, let's go, sometimes even less, depending on what the topic is, so I think it really just depends, but I think, wanting to learn and pushing yourself to continue to learn in the PR space, while also keeping in mind the human element of it, are the two most compelling things that are transferable to whatever PR position or PR outreach that you're doing. So I hope that's, sorry, I give long-winded answers, but I hope that helps answer.
You answered my next question, which was just gonna be like, what are the most important fundamentals that you should have as a PR professional? Like, if you were like, what are the basic things that you need to be successful? Just,
I would definitely say keeping in that human element. So that's communications, that's consideration, like for me, like I have like Post-it notes about certain factoids I learn about certain reporters, just to keep in mind if I reach out to them, this is the thing I need to keep in mind while reaching out to them. They don't like email, or they don't like phone calls, or, they just came back from maternity leave, like things like that, that might not be necessarily obvious, but keeping that in mind, being open to the communication and the human element, always keeping in mind, at the end of the day, even if you're in the B2B field, there are people that are working in those businesses that you're trying to get as clients. Those are the people that matter. The reporters and the audience and the readers are the ones that matter. So keeping in mind the person element and constantly being willing to learn and adapt and understand. There's a lot of experimentation when it comes to PR. Some things will hit, some things like and it happens with a lot of forms of communication. You never know when people try and talk about like the formula for like a viral hit and things like that. Some things just take off, and it's the same way in the PR world. Some things will just take off and you'll get a ton of coverage on it. You'll be like, I don't even know what I did differently. But it's that experimentation, that learning, and that person element, that really feeds into it. Obviously there's like analytics and things in the back end that you should always take in consideration that are very boring and dry, but are necessary. But really, I think it's the willingness to learn and evolve with the industry and with the field, and really keeping in mind the people that are involved that you're working with, because it is if you are not a people person, PR is probably not for you, to be fully candid. If you're an entrepreneur that's very limited in capacity wise, see if you can hire a PR person for 5 hours a week if you really don't want to deal with people in the general public. But I would say that if you're willing to work with people, if you're willing to keep people in mind and really what they want to learn and understand, that's kind of like the key to public relations, in my opinion and in my experience.
Thank you. No, you
We'll be reaching out. I think we have some more
Yeah.
questions, but, like, we'll reach out
Yeah.
afterwards. Thank you so much.
Of course, please, anytime, email me, add me on LinkedIn. I'm all about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cheyenne, for your time. We went much more than what we had scheduled, but they have a lot more questions. We will reach out to you definitely. And again, a round of applause again to Cheyenne.
Thank you so much.
It was a very insightful session, and we really look forward to having you again in the masterclass.
Of course. Awesome. Thank you so much. You all have a great one.
Thank you so much, Cheyenne. Have a good night.